You're listening to Mammal Watching with Charles Foley and John Hall. You can find other episodes at mammalwatching.com/podcast.
Welcome to the Mammal Watching podcast with me, John Hall in New York.
And me, Charles Foley in Minneapolis. John, so good to see you. I know that you've been doing a lot of traveling recently. How did it all go?
Great to see you too, Charles. And I know you've also been traveling. But yeah, thank you. I have been doing too much traveling. I never thought I'd say that, but it feels like that. So I just got back from Japan and a bit of China, and I was with Bob Pittman, who you remember from, was it season one, maybe? The world's top cetacean lister. His wife, Lisa Balance, who runs the Marine Mammal Institute in Oregon State, and our friend Todd Pusser, who we've traveled with several times. And that was a lot of fun. I'd say it was a lot of fun now because it was successful, because the whole trip was based around trying to find a Sato's beaked whale. But at the time, I was a nervous wreck. And I've realized that cetacean trips are probably the most stressful trips of all, because not only are they dependent on finding the cetacean, but they're also dependent on having the weather to go and look for it. So you can't even pretend to look if you can't get out to sea. And for the first 5 days, I think we were kind of land-bound, waiting for the weather to clear, which was foggy, and then it was too rough. And so I was a ball of nerves. The others were more relaxed. And then everything changed. The sea was like glass. We went out there 15 miles offshore towards Russia, the Sakhalin Islands, and there were Sato's beaked whales all over the place. So we had a whole day with them. It was Bob Pittman's 94th species of cetacean, I think. It was my 70th. It was Lisa Balance's 70th. It was Todd's pretty much his 80th. So there were some heavy listers on that trip.
Right.
But it was a fabulous place. Really nice to spend more time in Japan, which I love. And I also picked up a Japanese badger finally in Tokyo. At the first night I got there, well, the first afternoon I got straight off the very, very long flight from New York, took a 3-hour subway ride to the very edge of Tokyo, fell asleep twice and missed my stops. Got to the hotel I'd booked, and it was the only cheap hotel I could find by this Mount Taco, which is a popular destination, especially the weekends. And I check into this hotel, and it's all a bit strange in there. It was kind of dark, and the room had some really odd artwork in it, and there was like a red light flickering in like a sort of alcove, and a chandelier and romantic music playing. And I didn't think much about it because I was so jet lagged. I just dumped my bags and went back out and went straight up the mountain and found my Japanese badger. So I got back to the room about 1 o'clock and thought I'd celebrate. So I opened what I thought was the mini bar, but it wasn't a mini bar. It was a sort of sex toy vending machine full of things that half of them I've got no idea what they did. But I realized that this place was so cheap because I'm pretty sure it must have been a love hotel. And they must have thought I was the world's biggest loser checking in there on my own with my binoculars and my camera. I don't know what they thought I was up to, but
Right, yes.
like everything else in Japan, it was very quiet and very clean. I didn't get kept awake by noises coming through the wall, but that was amusing.
Right. So they make their money on the minibar then, huh?
I think so. It was very strange. And then I popped over to China to see my friend Frank, who runs the Yangtze River Finless Porpoise NGO in Nanjing. And he took me on a whistle stop tour by high-speed train went to a couple of different spots in China for the weekend. I picked up about 8 or 9 new mammals there, but a really nice patch of forest near Guangzhou, like a hill forest where we went up and down the road, and it was like booming with stuff. We saw a hedgehog that had only been described a couple of years ago, a new species. There were lots of rodents running around. We saw my hog badger, though not as well as I wanted. And once again, I was really impressed with Chinese people. The efficiency of those trains is something else. Every train left to the minute, arrived to the minute. Between Nanjing and Shanghai, which are two huge cities, but 300 kilometers apart, there's a high-speed train every 10 minutes. Wow. It's incredible. So it's very, very easy country to get around, especially when you have help from the locals, and just really pleasant, lovely people. And I think there's so much potential there in China. So busy couple of weeks.
Right.
I wanted to read as well, just Todd. So Todd Pusser, our friend Todd, was going off in Japan afterwards with his family, and he has been trying to get his wife Jess to be more interested in mammal watching. I mean, she's interested in nature for sure. She works with cetaceans. But he was trying to get her more into spotlighting and things, and he was working on her, trying to persuade her to go out into the forest with him. And finally, he thought he'd found the answer with the promise of seeing some Japanese giant flying squirrels, which are pretty cute and charismatic. So he persuaded her to go out that night, and he sent me this text, which really made me laugh, because I think anyone who's tried to go mammal watching with a reluctant friend or family member can identify. Almost perfect evening tonight in primeval forest with Jess. We saw 9 giant flying squirrels and 2 badgers and a Ural owl. Great looks all. Now the almost. At one point, we were laying in the dirt road, Jess with her head on my chest, watching a pair of flying squirrels forage above our heads. Fireflies danced in the sky, and a distant Ural owl was hooting. I thought it could not get any more perfect. Jess was loving it, and I was envisioning how easy it was going to be to get her to go on other trips like this in the future. All was right with the world. Then she looked at her ankle and shouted, "What the fuck is that?" Turns out a leech had found her, and then 4 of its friends. So evening went from perfect to disaster in an instant. It was a long walk back to the hotel.
Oh dear. Poor Todd.
So easy to imagine. And apparently she was even more pissed that he'd stopped to take photos of them, one of which he sent me before pulling them off her leg.
Right. Todd's going to have to go back to microfishing. Isn't that his main hobby?
Right. Microfishing.
So, microfishing. I'm still not 100% sure exactly what that is, but I suspect he's going to be doing it on his own regardless. So our guest today is Laila Bahaa-el-din, a carnivore specialist who joins us from Switzerland. I first heard about Laila when I started seeing some amazing camera trap photos of golden cats and other rare creatures about 10 years ago and wondered how she was getting them. And the answer was that she was the first person ever to do a comprehensive study of the African golden cat, doing her PhD of the species in Gabon in 2010 to 2013. Now, the golden cat is one of those near mythical cat species that's incredibly difficult to see, let alone study. And Laila's work has contributed greatly to our knowledge of the species in the wild. Laila also set the groundwork for a possible lion reintroduction in Gabon and has since worked in Botswana and Namibia. She currently lives in Switzerland, developing camera trap technology for professional photographers and videographers with a Swiss startup called IntelliTraps. She has also joined the staff of the Cat Specialist Group and now edits Cat News, which is the specialist group journal. Laila, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's great to meet you, Laila. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Yeah. Can we start by asking, how did you become interested in wildlife?
Well, I was fortunate in having a very close relationship with my grandparents when I was growing up, and they were just the most incredible people. They had these lives of adventure, and my grandmother was part of the code breaking unit at Bletchley Park during the Second World War. My grandfather was the first to interview Hillary and Tenzing at base camp of Mount Everest after their successful ascent.
Wow!
Just so the stories they told and the awe that I had for them, but perhaps most impressive to me was that my grandfather was the chairman of the Cat Specialist Group for pretty much my entire childhood, and he wrote books about lots of different wildlife, particularly elephants and tigers. And in those books, he would dedicate them to his grandchildren. Our names were written in those books. And so when my friends would come over, I would show them those books, and I was so proud. And so I'd sort of forgotten about that aspect. And then when I started studying wildlife, I came back to Switzerland, and I saw a friend I hadn't seen since early childhood. And she reminded me, she said, "Oh, wow, you did what you always said you were going to do. You wanted to be just like your grandpa."
Yeah. Inspiring grandparents for sure. And what led you specifically to become interested in cats?
Well, I was obviously innately interested in cats because of my grandfather, but I didn't want to study cats because I wanted to make my own way. I wanted to find my own field. And I spent some time with a very inspiring chap called Simon Tomset in Kenya, who works on birds of prey. And I fell head over heels in love with raptors. And so that was the route I was going to go down. I was never academically inclined, but he insisted I needed a PhD if I wanted to be taken seriously. So my whole plan was to use raptors as indicators of ecosystem health, and I was writing all my proposals. It was really, very definite. And one day I was reading a blog where there was a picture of a cat in Bwindi, and the people were describing this amazing sighting they'd had of this African wildcat hunting a mouse. And I thought, well, that's not an African wildcat. So I commented on the post saying, well, I think that's actually an African golden cat. And the poster responded saying, no, we thought about that, but we really don't think that's correct. So I got in touch with Luke Hunter of Panthera, who you interviewed, and Philip Henschel, who you might have come across, who worked on leopards in Gabon.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent them the picture, and they confirmed for me there was a golden cat. But through this exchange, so, they asked me more about myself and how I came to know about golden cats. And by the end of that day, we had pretty much decided that I was off to Gabon to study African golden cats. As you know, just fate intervened. And I couldn't escape my grandfather's park, happily, I'll say.
Oh, how you must have had days cursing Luke and Philippe. Particularly when you were dealing with Gabonese logistics, yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so you ended up doing your PhD then on the golden cat, which is basically one of the most enigmatic of all the wildcats. So tell us a bit about the golden cat itself.
So when I started studying the golden cat, most of the publications talked about it as being rare, nocturnal, very shy. And Gordon Boy, who wrote this famous piece in Swara magazine called The Phantom Feline, sort of painted this picture of this, very, very rare, enigmatic species. So when I got going on the golden cat, that's what I expected. But thankfully for the golden cat, we had better news, which was that I was camera trapping a lot of them, and through their spots we could identify the individuals and see that they were actually many more than we expected. So that was very encouraging. And so the naturally rare moniker was incorrect, but they certainly do suffer in areas where there's deforestation or logging, not as badly as long as it's responsible forest management, but habitat loss at a larger scale is very damaging, as is fragmentation and other things like that. But and the way I found that out was I set up camera traps in 6 different areas of Gabon, all with sort of different land uses or slight variations in habitat, to look at how their densities were impacted by these human activities. And so I spent a few months in a hunting area, a little village where they did very sort of low intensity hunting. And even at that low intensity, there was a loss of about 77%, if I recall correctly, in density. So it really does suffer. And mostly because people use snares. They don't go out to hunt golden cats, but they are incidental bycatch a lot of the time. But through all those findings, it allowed me to then assess them for the red list, the IUCN red list of threatened species, and we upgraded it to vulnerable based on those findings and the projections for Africa of deforestation, development, road encroachments into previously untouched areas, those sorts of things.
So you mostly studied them through camera traps. So what would you do? Would you go and set a bunch of camera traps out in one area for a month or so and then move them to another area? Or how exactly did you do that?
So I would always spend a few weeks at the beginning just walking the entire study area, taking down GPS coordinates for any tracks, scats, any signs, also of leopards, because I was interested to look at the sort of interaction between the two species as well. So I was noting all the signs of the two cats, which they're the only two cat species in those forests anyway. And then I would design a grid based on the signs, and then I think I'd have about 60 camera trap sites per area, and generally leave them up for at least 60 days, and then yeah, take them down. My first study area was in Mikongo in Lopia National Park, and then I was still using the 35mm film camera traps. So I had no idea how well I was doing in photographing the cats. But you when you're camera trapping, I think you've had other guests on that have said the same. You try to get into the role of the cat, think about how it might act, where it might pass, and everything. And so I was doing that, but without any reinforcement. Until I could get back to the city a few months later to develop the photo. So that was always very exciting. But I must say, I appreciated the change to digital for the next study sites.
Yeah, I bet you did, yes. And yeah, I always remember we started also with the 35mm, and I still remember it was like Christmas when you got all of the photos back all at once and you just go through them. And how successful were you typically in getting golden cats? Did you get them right off the bat on your first site, or did it take a while?
No, we did. It was always quite successful because they used trails very, very helpfully, very considerately. So no, we always had plenty of cats, and the logging concessions were the easiest because they've created these big roads to get their logs out, and so you just place cameras on those trails and you almost guaranteed to get the cats.
Oh,
Wow.
and so now the golden cat has two different morphs, right? I mean, right, so that's got the golden morph and the gray morph. And did you find both morphs in Gabon, or was one dominant to the other? How did it pan out?
I think they were pretty even between the gray and the red. I never got any melanistic ones, which have been recorded in other areas. In Uganda, for example, they have been photographed. But no, I just got the two. But there's also a huge variation in the amount of spots. I had some that were virtually spotless, and others that were heavily spotted. So yeah, lots of interesting questions about what causes this variation, but I don't have any answers to them.
Right. And it's mostly a forest species, but it does occasionally move out into the savannas. Did you trap it much in open grassland areas, or was it mostly just in the forests?
No, and I'll confess I never really tried, because the idea was always to get as much data as possible. And I think my chances would have been diminished. And records of them in savannas, we just have records, as far as I last checked, of them really just crossing a savanna patch to get from one forest area to the other. But really spending time within savannas or hunting there, I haven't heard of any records, but that might be outdated now.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously very difficult animal to see. How long did it take you to actually clap eyes on a golden cat, and under what circumstances was it?
It was my third year, and I was camera trapping in a logging concession, and I was having a very rare day off. I was lying in my tent reading a book, feeling very cozy. And most of the time I was walking through the forest, terrified of meeting an elephant. So these rare moments of being cozy in my tent were cherished. But a bird flew into my tent, and I had to sort of get up and help it out. And once I was up, I thought, okay, right, let's get out there. And so I picked up my camera, which I never ever took with me. My early days in Africa, I never went anywhere without a camera, but in Gabon, it was just too cumbersome. We were just walking 8 to 10 hours a day through the forest. And, if an elephant comes at you, you want to be able to get away quickly. So it just never happened. But on that day, amazingly, I grabbed my camera and went out. And I went out with my field assistants, two local guys, and they were very, very, very good at usually sort of detecting elephants in advance. So I always had them ahead of me. But on this, because they make a lot of noise on this day, I actually decided to walk ahead myself because I didn't want them spooking away anything that might be coming. And at one point, yeah, I stopped. I saw this shape on the road, but I couldn't. It was nothing like I had seen before. And so I raised my camera and I used the zoom lens to focus on it. And to my amazement, it was the golden cat. I was shaking. I was just completely blown away. I'm surprised I had the wherewithal to actually press the shutter button. And my field assistants at that point arrived behind me and just whispered into my ear, "Chat doré," which means golden cat in French. And we just, yeah, it left, immediately. I got a picture of it because it was sort of sitting and it sort of, left the trail. It was a matter of seconds, but seconds I'll never forget.
Wow, that must have been quite incredible. And was that the only sighting you ever had of a cat, or did you ever get? It was the one. Wow, one sighting in 4 years.
Yeah. Now I know people who have had more luck, but often it's when you're driving at night from one place to another through the forest. That's often when people had their sightings. But like that, walking, it's quite unusual. Yeah.
Wow, breathtaking stuff. It's interesting what you say about them being predominantly a forest species, because the few records I'd heard about pre-Uganda, where they're seeing them quite often now, was in Lope, but in the savannah. But I guess it's just because people are driving and they're easy to spot, even if they're just transient going through. But very cool.
Yeah, and that's where there was the biggest presence as well of people who might be interested in photographing.
No, exactly. Yeah. It's where people are, not where the cats are always. Exactly. You've touched on many of the results of your study already, but what else did you find in this research?
So along with looking at the sort of conservation impacts, I also did the sort of classic ecology stuff. So I also collected scats, looked at their diets, and for the first time, I got genetic identification of the scats, because previously there were these studies on golden cat and leopard scats, but there is overlap in how they look and their size and everything. So there might have been some mistaken identity previously. So it was quite cool in this case to be able to be sure that that I had golden cat diet and leopard diet, and the overlap was actually lower than previously thought. Golden cats really are hunting mostly rodents, whereas the leopards are hunting the larger prey, the ungulates. And what else? I also did some interviews with communities to look at the sort of attitudes towards golden cats, and I didn't get any impression that they were considered a conflict animal. There didn't seem to be livestock raiding or anything like that. There was a general overall positive attitude towards them. They are, if they are caught in snares, their skins are used in rituals and things like that, as are many cats, because of their not just perceived, because of their power and their just grace and all the reasons we love cats.
Wow, interesting.
And besides rodents, what's the largest animal that we know that golden cats will eat?
So blue duikers also quite little, and they eat a lot of them, but they eat monkeys, quite large monkeys. And I don't know if you've ever come across this footage of a golden cat chasing some, is it red colobus in Uganda? But incredible. I think it was they were studying chimpanzees and set these camera traps and got it's really worth watching. It's quite something.
Wow. I will look for that and try and include it as a link. Now, moving beyond golden cats to some of the other mammals in Gabon, which is an extraordinary place for mammal watching. What other interesting mammals did you see? In particular, did you see a giant pangolin by any chance?
I'd like to say yes, and I can say yes, but not under the circumstances I would have liked. So yeah, having lived in this village hunting area, pangolins were coming in every night. I mean, they just go out with a torch and they're just, especially the white-bellied pangolin. But I did also see them bringing in some giant pangolins, sadly. But in brighter news, I did, on my wanderings, come across a black-bellied pangolin, which was
nice,
very, very special indeed. And then in terms of I mean, this is where I can talk for hours.
Please do, please do. This is our bread and butter.
No, I mean the wildlife, yeah, it's just incredible. And yeah, just to think of a few of the more special moments I had. I used to sit, by the rivers, and when you collect the cat scats, it comes with all this organic material, and you sort of want to wash that away so you can find, the fur of the prey and things, so you can identify what they're eating. So I would often go and rinse off the scats, spend a few hours going through my scat collection and cleaning the scat. And so I was doing that one day, and from behind me walked out a large male chimpanzee, and he looked me straight in the eye. And sometimes when you come across a person that you don't really know, but you just acknowledge each other with a nod and keep going, that's pretty much what happened. It was just astonishing.
Wow.
I couldn't believe that it was a wild animal, because it really was just an acknowledgement, and he crossed over the river and went on his way. And it felt really, that was really a very, very special moment.
Wow.
And on another occasion, I was on my own, which I rarely was, because I have a terrible sense of direction and I usually get lost. And on this occasion, I did exactly that. And so I was doing, the sensible things of following a river, bending over the vegetation so I could keep track of where I was going. And next thing, up in a tree, I saw a female gorilla with a baby. And until that moment, I had been charged by silverback gorillas so many times, but I'd always had a sensible local field assistant there to remind me not to run away, because your body is telling you, isn't it? It's going, run, run, run. And your brain has to override it and say, no, you have to stand your ground. Don't look offensive, but don't look scared. My brain, yeah, I mean, it worked, but it was difficult. It's difficult. And on this occasion, being on my own and having no sensible field assistant, I really didn't want to be charged by the silverback. So I just looked up at this female in the tree, and I put my finger to my lips and I went, shh. I was begging her not to alert the silverback, and I just sort of slowly backed away. And made my way out of there without ever having to come face to face with the silverback. So I was very grateful to her.
Yeah. Oh, what a beautiful moment.
So one of the things that you did when you were there was that you looked into the possibility of reintroducing lions into Gabon. Can you tell us a bit about that? When did lions go extinct in the country? And if they were to be reintroduced, where would they put them?
So I have to cast my mind back now a little bit. If I'm not mistaken, they were declared extinct in 1996. But then suddenly, now I'm really searching for the dates. When was this? 2014, perhaps. A lone male lion was caught on camera trap in Bateke National Park. Bateke is very different to the rest of the country. It's sort of the northern tip of the Kalahari Sands, and it's significantly made up of savanna and forest mosaic type habitat. And so incredibly, suddenly they were these pictures of a lion, and where he came from isn't certain, but they did manage to get some DNA. And by the way, I don't know if if you get the opportunity to chat to Phil Henschel, he has a wonderful story about how he went about getting the DNA of that lion. It's a really good one. So they got DNA, found that he really was of local stock, and wanted to use that moment and that genetic individual to recreate a population. And so I went to start talking to local people to see what attitudes were around there, what people's needs were in case there were lions reintroduced, to not just sort of come in and do this big project without talking to local communities and trying to improve their livelihoods and things as best the project could. So the lions are part of the Southern African. So you had Luke Hunter on
Yeah.
recently, and he was talking about the two subspecies in Africa, and there's the northern and southern. And so this population, or previous population, now individual, was part of the southern line. So it was a question of finding a source population to bring a few females who would hopefully breed with this local male. And yeah, I started, designing a release enclosure and all that kind of stuff. And we had plans to do annual transfers of buffaloes into the park to sort of boost the prey population. But unfortunately, the project slowed down a little bit, and then there was a change in government, and so there has been a lot of setbacks. But in that time, there has been a huge increase in the prey population because the parks, in collaboration with Panthera, have done an incredible job of anti-poaching. So now it looks like the park could support a lion population even without adding any prey. But sadly, the male is no longer around. So they are going to have to introduce the females with a male.
And where would the most likely source population come from?
So that they were most closely related to lions in Namibia, but there was a plan to get them from Namibia that fell through, and they're now going to come from Zimbabwe. But it was they are lions that originally came from Namibia, so genetically they are entirely compatible with that previous Bateke population.
Right. It's quite astonishing when you think about the wildlife of Gabon, where you've got obviously the forest elephants and your giant forest hogs and the hippos that surf, and then to think that there's lions over there as well as gorillas and chimpanzees. It's really quite an astonishing country for wildlife, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think 2012 stands out to me because, one moment I'd be in the forest, and walking into a leopard or photographing a golden cat, being chased down by an elephant or whatever it is, and then I'll go to the capital to renew my visa, and there at the coast I'll see humpback whales and turtles nesting, and it just never ends. And yeah, it's a very, very special country.
Yeah.
It is indeed. It's also been referred to as not a country for beginners in terms of the wildlife, I think, and being a part of it. And I imagine you've had some interesting, by which we mean hair-raising experiences while you were there. Can you tell us about some of them, particularly things like elephants, which I know are a major challenge in some of that forest?
Yes. To be honest, I didn't think I was going to survive my time there. I don't write poetry, but I started writing poetry about my imminent demise. Yeah, I'll tell you that the day that I took down the last camera traps and made it back safely to the research station, I drank a glass of wine and I just thanked whatever it was that kept me safe during those 4 years. But yes, elephants were definitely the worst of them, and the stories of being chased, just added up. And with each time, you just, your PTSD gets a little bit worse. And yeah, you just, I think, just live on adrenaline after a while. But let's see, like, trying to think of maybe the worst occasion I think might have been in Langwe Bai in Avindo National Park. And there was a notorious elephant that sort of the same road that we used, or path, should I say, to get from the road to the research station. Yeah, had these elephants that just sort of almost seemed to wait for us. And one chap he was there to build a platform for watching gorillas, and he got a tusk through the lung, but he was evacuated and survived. But then whilst I was there, a girl who was studying the elephants was knocked down and was also thankfully evacuated. But the stories were mounting up, and it was our last day, and we were walking out, and I was, it was pouring with rain. I was wearing one of these huge ponchos. I had an action packer, these huge containers with the equipment on my head, and the ground was really slippery. And next thing you hear the trumpet, and you just, no, not today, not under these circumstances. So action packer flies off their head, and trying to run on the slippery ground, and I'm tripping up on the ponchos. I'm trying to take the poncho off, over my head and throwing that aside. And anyway, everything, my field assistants are doing the same, so just things flying in every direction. And possibly that saved us, because the elephant didn't know what to make of it.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
And I was told in Central African Republic that people are quite afraid of the buffalo over there, and our guide was showing them a huge amount of respect. Did you ever have any run-ins with buffalo? Are they considered to be a dangerous species in Gabon?
I didn't. I had heard of people who had, but thankfully that was not something that I ever came across. But what I found is people were particularly afraid of chimpanzees. I had so many negative stories, like groups of males who sort of egg each other on, and that can be quite an intimidating thing to come across. People were also very afraid of pythons. So I was terrified of the venomous snakes, but they seem to take those in their stride. But the pythons seem to have more of an impact. Yeah, but
More of a
no,
grip on them. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh dear.
Charles.
Okay, so let's talk camera traps, because obviously they have had a huge impact on how we monitor wildlife. And now they're being used pretty much all over the world, and showing up some great results. Obviously, we're often finding many new range extensions for species, etc. And obviously, you were one of the early adopters of camera traps, and we're even using the 35mm film versions. And I know that you've obtained some incredible photographs. So can you tell us about your current work? Because you're making products with IntelliTraps, and these seem to be more for professional photographers and videographers. But what sort of products are you actually making?
Well, I was just listening to your podcast with Sebastian Kinnerknecht, who was the first person to introduce me to these professional sort of setups with SLRs. And on his podcast with you, he said that camera trapping was 99% frustration. And my very good friend and now boss was, I think, fed up with that statistic of 99% frustration, and he decided to set up a company to significantly decrease that frustration. And obviously, some of it we can't do anything about, like in Sebastian's case, the bay cat walking behind his camera. But we can do everything possible to make the technological side of it less frustrating, because there are too many stories of signs that the animal has passed right in front of your trap, and the trap didn't manage to get the photo. It was either out of batteries, out of this, the flash wasn't working, whatever it was. So we're sort of creating a fully integrated system that has more, normally we have infrared sensors, but we've got 2 sensors in there to make it more reliable, so you don't get all these waste photos that fill up your cameras. It will be adaptable, so you can set your flash power depending on whether it's night and day, so you don't have to find a compromise in your lighting. And for me, one of my favorite aspects is because a lot of photographers still use the active infrared sensors, because you get the precision. You can decide exactly where the animal is in your photograph when it triggers. Whereas with the passive infrared, you sort of whenever it enters the frame, you'll get the picture, and it won't necessarily be where you want it. And I think with our system now, we have the precision of the active beam technology, but the battery saving and the ease of setup of the passive infrared sensors. So I think it's going to resolve pretty much all the issues that people have, technical issues that people have with camera trapping.
And do you sell it along with the camera, or is it just a body which then people put their digital SLR into? How does it work?
So the main, the main product is this sensor, this double sensor system. But we are also producing, or will be producing when we go to market, when we're finished with the development, a case to protect your SLR camera that you connect to the sensor. We can produce flashes, which have this adaptability that I mentioned, and you can connect those. But the system does also work with third-party flashes and things. So you could only get the sensor system if you already had all the other gear. But it would be a much more pleasant experience, I would say, if you got the fully integrated system. But that sounds like a sales pitch. I don't want it to be a sales pitch, but that's what we're working towards.
Right. Yeah, no, it sounds fascinating because, as you say, it can be a real exercise in frustration. And let's face it, most of the off-the-shelf camera traps that you buy at the moment take really poor pictures, and you can tell immediately that it's a camera trap photo. And you look at the really good camera trap pictures, obviously taken with an SLR, and you think how many hours of work have actually gone into that. So being able to reduce that amount of work so that more people can take really good photos can only be a good thing, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah. Well, exactly. And hopefully it can contribute to people like Sebastian, who do this incredible work in sharing images with the world. Really, really important.
Great. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about, Laila?
Not really. I just want to say that, a lot of the stuff we've spoken about today was, from more than 10 years ago. And, life has moved on and many things have happened since. And it's been such a pleasure to go back over some of those stories and moments. So thank you very, very much for inviting me on.
Well, yeah, Laila, I think one of the fun things about these podcasts is that we do allow people to reminisce a little bit about their work and the things that they've done. And let's face it, people who've spent a lot of time out in the field in wild places have typically seen some amazing things. And we always love those stories. And you had some great ones. I love the fact you try to shush a female gorilla so she doesn't rat you out to the silverback, and then the sort of casual nod towards a chimpanzee to the river. It's like, yeah, I see you. That's fantastic. Yes, the elephants ambushing you on the roads. I know that that really does get your cortisol levels going up a bit. And simply the fact that it ultimately turned you to writing poetry. I think that's a wonderful comment. I wonder how many other field biologists have become poets just out of sheer fear of the animals in the bush. But no, thank you so much. This was absolutely wonderful. I've learned a lot about golden cats and really appreciate your insights.
No, thank you very much. Lovely chatting to you both. And someday I'd like to hear more about you two as well, but I guess I'll just have to listen to more of your podcasts.
Thank you so much, Laila. As you said, great for us to have a chance to share in those reflections of such an interesting life. I'd love it if you shared some poetry. I'm sure we...
No way!
No, I don't think that's going to happen. It's worth a shot. But yeah, what a great set of stories. I'd also like to give a shout out to that little bird that flew into your tent, because normally we're kind of anti-bird on this podcast, but just to show we're not always, a bird encounter did lead to a very good sighting. So good to know. Thank you again. Lovely to meet you here.
Likewise.
You've been listening to Mammal Watching with Charles Foley and John Hall. You can find other episodes at mammalwatching.com/podcast.